Hello! Welcome to the text-to-audio converter. Write something here and I will narrate it for you.
With an interested buyer, 2 weeks, maybe less if we speed up the process. The cruise would last 10 days. I opened my laptop and wrote an email to Teresa, my real estate agent friend. I need to sell a house quickly. It's a matter of dignity. That night, I didn't cry anymore. I prepared a chamomile tea, sat on the balcony, and watched the city of Bogota lit up. For the first time in years, I wasn't thinking about Sebastian, Daniela, or my grandchildren. I was thinking about myself. Who was I before I became Sebastian's mother or the children's grandmother? I remembered the Carmen who loved to dance, who dreamed of visiting Barcelona, who had her own friends and interests. The Carmen who had been gradually erased to make way for a convenient version of myself, one that fit perfectly into the corners of their lives, without bothering, without taking up too much space. That message at the port hadn't just been an exclusion from a cruise. It had been a cruel reminder that to them, I was no longer essential. I was dispensable, an extra, not family. Well, if that's how they wanted to play, I also had my cards, and it was time to use them. I picked up my diary and started writing a plan. Not for revenge, although there was a bitter taste of justice in all of it. It was for survival. It was for self-love. While their boat moved away from the Colombian coast, I began to chart my own course. A course where, for the first time in decades, I was the priority. The following week passed in a whirlwind of calculated actions. Teresa, my real estate agent friend, found an interested couple in just 3 days. Young, childless, with cash in hand. We scheduled a visit for the next day. I needed an excuse to enter Sebastian's house. After all, although it was legally mine, they considered it their home. I used the key I had always kept, for emergencies, Mom, Sebastian used to say, and entered with the strange feeling of invading a space that belonged to me on paper, but not in their hearts. I came to pick up some plants to take care of while you're away, I told the curious neighbor who was watching me from the garden. She smiled, believing me. After all, I was Sebastian's devoted mother, known by everyone in the neighborhood. Inside the house, I was greeted by silence and memories. I remembered the day I handed them the keys, the emotional hug Sebastian gave me, the tears of gratitude in Daniela's eyes. How had that turned into just family in such a short time? As I walked through the rooms, I noticed the signs of my gradual exclusion. In the photos on the walls, I appeared less and less. In the latest picture frames, I wasn't in any. On the bookshelves, no book I had given was displayed. Even the blanket I knitted for them was stored in the closet, replaced by one bought from a store. In Sebastian's office, I opened the drawers looking for any documents related to the house. That's when I found an envelope with a lawyer's letterhead. Inside, a draft document titled Property Transfer. Dated 3 months ago, but never signed or presented to me. The text was clear. They planned to request the transfer of the house to their names as soon as the last installment was paid. That is, 2 months ago. But something stopped them. Perhaps they calculated that I wouldn't easily accept. Or maybe they were waiting for the perfect moment to broach the subject when I was emotionally vulnerable. I put the document in my purse, evidence. Not that I needed more reasons to go ahead with my plan, but it confirmed my suspicions. It wasn't forgetfulness, it was strategy. The next day, the interested couple visited the house. Camila and Roberto, both doctors, fell in love with the property. It's perfect for us, they said, unaware of the drama surrounding those walls. They made an offer above market value, with cash payment and a 1-week closing deadline. Are you sure about this, Carmen? Teresa asked when we signed the initial documents. I've never been so sure, I replied, surprising myself with the firmness in my voice. Dr. Rodrigo, my lawyer, handled all the legal aspects. He explained that as the registered owner, I had every right to sell the property. They cannot claim surprise or ignorance, as the property has always been clearly in your name, he explained. The sale was concluded in record time. The money was deposited into my account, and the new owners would receive the keys on July 27th, one day before the cruise returned. There was one more detail to resolve. What would they find upon their return? I didn't want to simply disappear. I wanted them to understand the consequences of their choices. So I wrote a letter. Sebastián and Daniela, the house you called home has been sold.
Legally, it was always mine, as you well knew. Just as you knew I finished paying off the mortgage 2 months ago using my retirement. When I received your message saying I wasn't enough family to join you on the cruise, I finally understood my place in your lives. A convenient, peripheral place, available only when needed. The new owners move in tomorrow. Your personal belongings have been stored in a paid storage unit for 3 months. The key and address are with Dr. Rodrigo Almeida, whose contact information is attached. Don't bother looking for me. Just as you needed space to grow as a family, I also need space to rediscover who I am beyond a disposable mother and grandmother. Carmen. I put the letter in an envelope and left it on the kitchen table, where it would surely be the first thing they saw. Beside it, I placed a copy of the house deed and the sales contract. On the last night before handing over the keys to the new owners, I did something I hadn't done in years: dance. I put on Carlos Vives music on my phone and spun around the empty living room, now without furniture, stripped of the false smiles and photographs, clean of unspoken lies. Your family is now homeless, I whispered to the echo of the empty house. That dance was not a celebration of revenge, it was a ritual of liberation. For years, I had defined myself by the roles I played in the lives of others. Sebastián's mother, Daniela's mother-in-law, Lucas and Sophia's grandmother. An emotional and financial ATM. A good example, always available, never too much. As I circled the empty room, I felt the weight of those roles detach from me. It was as if each turn returned a piece of the Carmen I once was, the one who had her own dreams, desires, a life beyond serving others. The next day, I handed the keys to Camila and Roberto. They were beaming, talking about redecorating plans, how they would turn the extra bedroom into a shared office. The energy of this house is special, Camila said. You can feel there was a lot of love here. There was, I replied. But not all love survives convenience. She looked at me without understanding, but smiled anyway. I smiled too, a genuine smile for the first time in days. As I walked out the gate for the last time, I felt a mix of emotions I couldn't name. It wasn't exactly peace, nor revenge, nor sadness. It was the painful relief of finally seeing reality as it is, not as we wish it to be. I returned to my apartment in Mexico City and made a call. Maria, I said to my sister, that trip to Barcelona we always dreamed of, how about next month? I hung up before she could answer, then sent the tickets I had bought that morning. It was time to live my own dreams, not just finance others. That night, I slept soundly for the first time since the day at the port. No nightmares, no waking up startled, no that chest pain that had accompanied me for weeks. As the boat slowly returned to the Colombian coast, I moved further and further away from the port of Cartagena, from which they had departed. Not physically, but emotionally. They planned to return to a life that no longer existed. I planned to leave for a life that was just beginning. The flight to Barcelona departed in exactly 30 days. Enough time to organize my new life and watch from afar the consequences of my decision. Not out of cruelty, but because they needed to understand that this was not a temporary nightmare. It was the reality they had built for me, one brick of selflessness at a time. 3 days before the cruise returned, I received a message from Sebastián. Mom, we miss you. The kids ask about you every day. I can't wait to show you the pictures. I smiled bitterly at the phone screen. The hypocrisy was so transparent I could almost see it shine between the words. No apology for the exclusion, no acknowledgement of the wound caused. Just the continuation of the script where I was supposed to play my role, the understanding mother, always ready to forgive. I didn't answer. Each unread notification was a small act of rebellion against decades of unconditional availability.
The next day, another message arrived, this time from Daniela. Carmen, we brought you some wonderful Belgian chocolates. Sophia chose them especially for Grandma. Again, I left it unread. Silence was my only possible response at that moment, because if I started talking, I might not be able to stop. And I wasn't ready for that confrontation yet. With 24 hours left until disembarkation, Sebastian called. I let it go to voicemail. Mom, it's strange you're not answering. Is everything okay? We're worried. We arrive tomorrow at 6 in the evening. Can we go to dinner? The kids miss you. The concern in his voice seemed genuine, which made everything even more confusing. How could he exclude me so coldly and then act as if nothing had happened? It was as if we lived in parallel realities. On disembarkation day, I woke up early and went to the cafe near the port. From a distance, I saw the enormous white boat slowly approaching the coast. Somewhere in that floating structure were the people I once called family. I ordered a double espresso and watched the growing movement at the terminal. Anxious families waiting for their loved ones, rideshare drivers holding signs with names, street vendors offering water and sodas. At 6:15 p.m., I saw Sebastian, Daniela, and the children coming down the ramp. They were tanned, smiling, laden with bags. Sophia held a new plush toy. Lucas wore a t-shirt from some Caribbean island. They looked like the perfect picture of a happy family. I turned away before they could see me, paid for my coffee, and left. I didn't need to witness the moment they read my letter, when they realized the house was no longer theirs. That wouldn't bring me satisfaction. I returned to my apartment and turned off my cell phone. Whatever happened in the next few hours, I didn't want to be a witness. It wasn't about torturing them or savoring their confusion. It was about finally creating the space I needed to heal decades of small disappointments. That night, I slept in restless sleep. Part of me still felt guilty, conditioned to put their needs above mine. But another part, the one that grew stronger every day, knew that I had done what was necessary. At 7:43 a.m. the next morning, the doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole and saw Sebastian. He was alone, with deep, dark circles under his eyes and a pale face. I opened the door without saying a word. "How could you?" were his first words, his voice trembling between anger and disbelief. "You sold our house without even consulting us." "It wasn't your house, Sebastian. It was mine. It always was. It's in the contract you never bothered to read." He ran his hands through his hair, disoriented. "But we lived there. We had a life there. The children grew up in that house. And I had plans to travel with you, to be part of the family. It's funny how plans change, isn't it? It was just one trip, Mom, a single trip." "No, Sebastian, it was the last straw. It was the moment I finally understood my place in your life. Convenient when you need me, disposable when I bother you." He threw himself onto the sofa, suddenly looking exhausted. "Where are we going to live now? Did you think about the children?" That question ignited something within me. Decades of sacrifices, of putting his needs above mine. And yet, his first concern wasn't with me, with my feelings, with the pain they caused me. It was with the inconvenience I had created. "You have 3 months deposit paid, enough time to find another place." And yes, I thought about the children. I thought about what kind of adults they will become when they see how you treat your own mother. Sebastian looked at me as if I were a stranger. In a way, maybe I was. The mother he knew, docile, always available, ready to sacrifice everything, had disappeared at the port that day. "Daniela is devastated," he said. "And how do you think I felt when I read your message that day? Family only, as if I were a distant acquaintance, not the woman who raised you alone." "It was just an unfortunate expression, Mom. It meant nothing." "It meant everything, Sebastian, and you know it. It was the perfect summary of what I've been feeling for years, that I'm only welcome when it's convenient, that my role is to finance dreams, not participate in them." He stood up, pacing nervously around the room. "What do you want from us?" "An apology." "Okay, sorry. We're both very sorry. It was insensitive, it was wrong. But selling our house? This is disproportionate. I don't want a forced apology, and it's not about the house. It's about respect. It's about finally understanding my worth. And what is that respect worth? The price of a house? That question hit me like a slap. Suddenly, I saw with crystal clarity what was happening. He wasn't there because he cared about my feelings or because he had understood his mistake. He was there because he needed a roof over his head. You still don't understand, do you? This isn't a negotiation. The house has been sold. The new owners have already moved in. It's irreversible, just like the damage you caused by excluding me from that trip. So what do we do now? You? I don't know. I'm going to Barcelona in 27 days. I'm finally going to live my life, not just exist in function of your lives. Sebastian looked at me as if he had received a shock. Barcelona? For how long? I don't know. Maybe a few weeks, maybe months. Maybe I won't come back.
She picked up her phone, her hands trembling. I need to tell Daniela. She won't believe it. Tell her I finally understood what family means. It's something small, self-contained, that eventually disintegrates. When Sebastian left, closing the door behind him, I felt an enormous weight lift from my shoulders. It wasn't happiness or satisfied revenge. It was simply the relief of finally having spoken the truths I had kept for so long. I picked up my notebook and opened the airline's email. The ticket to Barcelona shone on the screen like a promise, not of escape, but of a new beginning. At 64, I was about to embark on an entirely new chapter, a chapter in which I was the protagonist, not just a secondary character in someone else's story. In the following days, messages and calls didn't stop. Sebastian, Daniela, even mutual friends who were enlisted to try and bring me to my senses. Each phone notification made me take a deep breath, searching for the strength to maintain my decision. Carmen, you can't just disappear and leave your son and grandchildren homeless, said Marta, my friend of decades, in a WhatsApp audio message. I know they hurt you, but this is disproportionate. Disproportionate. That word haunted me, as if there were an exact measure of reaction for each wound, a perfect equation to calculate how much suffering deserved what response. They're not homeless, Marta, I replied. They're in a paid storage unit for 3 months. Besides, Sebastian earns well. I always said the house was too small for them. Now they have the opportunity to find something that truly suits the family. Even as I typed those words, I felt a pang of guilt, not for my actions, but for the bitter person I seemed to be becoming. This wasn't the Carmen I knew, or perhaps it was, finally liberated after decades of repressing her true feelings. On the 10th day after selling the house, I received a bouquet of flowers, white roses, my favorites, with a handwritten card from Daniela. Carmen, I understand your pain and sincerely apologize for how we made you feel. Can we talk? Not for us, but for the children. They miss you. The appeal to the children was predictable. I knew they would eventually use them as an emotional shield, as a last resort to make me give in. But this time it wouldn't work, because I also missed them, painfully. But I needed to break the cycle I had created, where my unconditional love was taken for granted and exploited. I placed the flowers in a vase, took a photo, and sent it to Daniela with a single word: thank you. It wasn't forgiveness or an opening to dialogue. It was a civilized acknowledgement of the gesture, nothing more. 2 weeks before my trip, I received an unexpected visit. Sophia, my 7-year-old granddaughter, accompanied by the nanny. Grandma! She ran into my arms as soon as I opened the door. I missed you so much. Why didn't you come to visit us in the new house? My heart sank. The children, of course, were not to blame for anything. They were just pawns in this emotional chess game that adults played. I missed you too, my love, I replied, hugging her tightly. I just needed to sort some things out. The nanny handed me an envelope. Mrs. Daniela asked me to deliver it personally. Inside, a formal invitation for dinner at the new house they had rented. To start over as a family, the card read in elegant calligraphy. That night, I sat with my diary and weighed my options. Going to dinner would be to signal that everything could go back to normal, that a formal apology was enough to erase years of small humiliations. Not going would be to confirm the image they were probably building, that of the bitter and vengeful old woman. I picked up the phone and called Sebastian. "I received the invitation," I said without preamble. "That's great," he seemed genuinely relieved. "So you're coming?" "No, Sebastian, I'm not." Silence on the other end of the line. "Mom, we're trying to fix things. What else do you want from us?" "I don't want anything from you, and that's the point. For years, you wanted me available when it was convenient and invisible when it wasn't. Now I'm choosing to be unavailable to you and visible to myself. But what about the children? They are not to blame for all this." "I agree, and that's why I'll keep in touch with them, but on my terms, not yours." "What terms are those?" His voice had a touch of poorly disguised irritation. "I'll take them to spend a weekend with me once a month, without you. Just as you wanted a cruise without me, I want time with my granddaughters without you." "This is ridiculous, Mom. Are you using the children as bargaining chips?" I hung up before he could reply. My hands were trembling, but not from fear or regret. No, I'm setting boundaries, something I should have done a long time ago. It was the adrenaline of finally confronting the toxic dynamics I had allowed to take root. The next day, Daniela showed up at my door. She was impeccably dressed as always, but her face betrayed sleepless nights. "Carmen, can we talk? Just the two of us, woman to woman." I gestured for her to come in. I offered coffee, which she refused, and we sat facing each other in the living room. "What happened to you?" she asked, her tone somewhere between concerned and accusatory. "This isn't the Carmen we know." "You're right, it isn't. That Carmen died at the port when she read her son's message saying she wasn't enough family for a cruise." Daniela lowered her eyes. "It was a terrible mistake. We were stressed with the preparations, and I wasn't comfortable with my mother also being on the cruise, and I thought it would be fair?" I interrupted, my voice remaining calm but firm. "What's fair about excluding me and then expecting me to keep paying your bills, to be available when you need me? We never asked you to pay for the house. You didn't have to ask. I offered because I thought I was part of the family, but you made it very clear that I'm not." Daniela sighed, running her hands over her face in a gesture of weariness. "Do you know how hard it is to establish yourselves as a couple when there's a very present mother-in-law? I need my space, my own family, without feeling like I'm constantly being watched or judged." "I never judged you, Daniela. I only tried to help." "But that's it, Carmen. Your help always comes with expectations. Every dinner you pay for, every gift for the children, every favor comes with this invisible rope that ties us to you. It's suffocating." Those words hit me like stones. For years, I thought I was building bridges, when in reality, I was creating shackles. But that didn't justify the way they treated me. If you felt this way for so long, why did you never say anything? Why did you accept the house, the money, my presence in your lives? Daniela fell silent, and in that silence, I found my answer. Convenience. It had always been convenience. "Do you want to know what I've learned these past few days?" I continued. "I learned that love shouldn't feel like a negotiation. There shouldn't be calculations about who owes what to whom. But you turns our relationship into that, into a transaction where I gave everything and received crumbs of affection when it was convenient." "That's not how we see things," she murmured. "Then how do you see it? Explain to me how excluding me from a family trip and then expecting everything to remain the same isn't exactly that." Daniela stood up, walking to the window. She stood there in silence for long minutes, observing the city. "You're right," she finally said, her voice almost a whisper. "We were selfish. We took advantage of your generosity, and when we decided we wanted space, we did it in the worst possible way."
It was the first time I'd heard a genuine acknowledgement, not a hasty excuse or a justification, but a real admission. "Thank you for being honest," I replied, feeling something inside me soften slightly. But that doesn't change what I need to do now. The trip to Barcelona? Among other things, I need to rediscover who I am when I'm not trying to be the perfect mother or the always available grandmother. I need to live for myself. Daniela turned to me, tears in her eyes. "What about us? Is there any chance of rebuilding this?" "I don't know," I replied honestly. "Maybe. But first, you need to learn to live without depending on me. And I need to learn without needing to be needed." After Daniela left, I sat on the sofa and cried. Not from sadness or regret, but from liberation. I had spoken truths I'd kept for years. I had set boundaries I should have established decades ago. And for the first time, I felt like I was on the right path. The days before the trip to Barcelona passed in a strange mix of anticipation and melancholy. Every item I put in my suitcase was a small affirmation of my new life. The red dress I never dared to wear because it was too daring for a grandmother. The high heels I saved for special occasions that never arrived. The poetry book I started reading years ago and never finished. Maria, my sister, called me every day, just as enthusiastic as I was. "Let's dance in Barcelona," she'd say, her voice full of energy. "Let's eat paella by the sea and drink sangria until we can't walk straight." Her joy was contagious and helped me ward off the moments of doubt that still assailed me in the early hours. 2 days before departure, I received a letter in the mail. I immediately recognized Sebastian's handwriting. Inside, a single sheet of paper with handwritten words. "Mother, I've spent the last few days thinking about everything you said. You're right. I was a terrible son. I accepted everything you gave me as if it were my right, without ever stopping to think about what it cost you. I remember when I was a child and came home from school. You were always there. Even when I know now you must have been exhausted from your 2 jobs. I remember how you worked so I could study, how you never complained. And when I grew up, instead of returning that love, I just kept receiving. Worse still, I started to resent your presence, as if you were a burden and not the reason I got to where I am. I'm not asking you to stay or cancel your trip. Go to Barcelona, live your life. You deserve that and much more. When you come back, if you want, I'd like to start over. Not like before, but in a healthier way, a way where I give as much as I receive. With love and regret, Sebastian." I read the letter 3 times, tears blurring my vision. It wasn't a magic solution, nor did it erase the pain, but it was a start, a genuine acknowledgement that came late but arrived nonetheless. I put the letter in my suitcase. I would take it with me to Barcelona, a reminder that even in the most painful situations, there was room for growth and change. The night before departure, Sophia and Lucas showed up with Sebastian. This time, he waited in the hallway while the children hugged me. "Are you going to be gone a long time, Grandma?" Lucas asked, his brown eyes full of concern. "Just a few weeks, my love. But when I come back, we'll spend a whole weekend together, just the 3 of us." "Promise?" Sophia insisted. "I promise." When the children ran back to their father, Sebastian and I exchanged a look. We said nothing, but something passed between us. A tacit understanding that things had changed irreversibly, but that perhaps, just perhaps, they could eventually get better. "Have a good trip, Mom," he said softly. "Thank you." And there, in that hallway, with the children between us, I felt for the first time in weeks a glimpse of hope. Not a return to the past, but the possibility of a different future. The flight to Barcelona departed promptly at 10:35 a.m. As the plane climbed above the clouds, I watched the city getting smaller and smaller below. Somewhere in that tapestry of buildings and streets was the family that had defined my entire adult life. But now, at 35,000 feet, I was just Carmen. Not a mother, not a grandmother, not a mother-in-law, just myself. Maria was waiting for me at Barcelona airport with a makeshift sign that read, "Welcome to your new life." We laughed and hugged as we hadn't in years. "You look different," she observed as we took a taxi to the hotel. "I'm older," I joked. "No, you're more you. I don't know how to explain it. It's like you've come back." Maybe she was right. For decades, I had molded myself to fit into the spaces others left for me. Now I was learning to occupy my own space, no matter how big or strange it seemed. Barcelona was exactly as I had dreamed. The narrow streets of the old city, Gaudi's logic-defying architecture, the Mediterranean sparkling under the sun like a liquid promise. Each day was a discovery, each meal a celebration, each conversation with strangers an opportunity to be whoever I wanted to be. On the third night, as we dined in a small tavern near Las Ramblas, Maria raised her glass of wine. A toast to the Carmen who was always there, but who finally managed to get out. "To new beginnings," I replied, clinking my glass against hers. That night, after Maria had gone to sleep, I went out alone to walk along the beach. The sand was cool under my bare feet. The waves whispered ancient secrets. I sat on the shore, letting the water lick my ankles. I thought about Sebastian, Daniela, the children. I thought about the house I sold, the cruise I was excluded from, all the little wounds that accumulated over the years. And for the first time, I could think about these things without feeling my chest tighten. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was acceptance. It was the understanding that the people we love can't always love us the way we need. And that's not a reflection of our worth, but of their own limitations. I took my phone out of my pocket. I had several unread messages from Sebastian. Photos of the children, small updates about the new apartment they had rented, questions about how the trip was going. I opened the camera and took a picture of the moon reflected in the sea. I sent it to him with a single word, peace. The reply arrived minutes later. "You look beautiful, Mom. The moon, I mean." I smiled. Maybe there was hope after all. The weeks in Barcelona turned into a month and a half. Maria had to return to Mexico, but I decided to stay a little longer.
I had rented a small apartment in Gracia, a bohemian neighborhood full of artists and cafes with terraces. For the first time in my life, I woke up without obligations. I could spend the morning in a museum, the afternoon reading in a park, the evening dancing salsa in a small club I discovered near home. I made friends. Teresa, a Catalan painter my age, Ahmed, a retired history professor, Clara, a young Brazilian who taught me how to use Instagram. "You have to document this transformation," Clara insisted. "People need to see that it's never too late to start over." I started posting photos. Me in front of the Sagrada Familia, me trying paella, me laughing in a flamenco dance class. Comments poured in from everywhere, from old friends, acquaintances, even from Sebastian. "Mom, you're radiant," he wrote on a photo of me in Parcuel. The children thought so too. Video calls with Sofia and Lucas became weekly. I showed them the streets of Barcelona, the street artists, the marvelous buildings. They told me about school, new friends, the new apartment. "When are you coming back, Grandma?" Lucas always asked. "Soon, my love, soon." But the truth was, I wasn't sure. Barcelona had become more than an escape. It was a mirror where I saw myself clearly for the first time in decades. I saw a woman who had worth beyond what she could give to others. A woman with desires, dreams, a life of her own. One afternoon, while having coffee on a terrace in Born, I received a call from Sebastian. "Mom, we need to talk, not on the phone. Can you talk now?" "I'm on a terrace, but yes, I can talk." I heard him take a deep breath. "Daniela and I have been in therapy. The therapist suggested that maybe we should have had this conversation a long time ago." "What conversation?" "About how we treated you, about the pattern we created where we expected everything from you and gave nothing in return." She called it reverse parentification or something like that, where the child becomes the center and the parent exists only to serve. I remained silent, letting him continue. "I realize now why you sold the house. It wasn't revenge, it was survival. It was the only way to force us to see what we were doing." "Sebastian, let me finish, please."
I want you to know that we're working on it, Daniela and I. We're learning to be more independent, not to depend on you for everything. And more importantly, we're teaching the children that grandparents are people, not just inexhaustible sources of love and money. I felt tears forming. Thank you for telling me that. When are you coming back? I don't know yet. I'm really enjoying it here. I feel free. Then stay. Stay as long as you need. But know that when you come back, things will be different, I promise. After hanging up, I sat on the terrace for hours, watching people pass by. Families, couples, loners like me, each with their stories, their wounds, their new beginnings. I picked up my diary and started writing. At 64, I learned that it's never too late to choose ourselves, that love that doesn't respect us isn't true love, that the bridges we build for others shouldn't be made at the cost of sinking ourselves. I learned that selling a house wasn't revenge, it was liberation. That setting boundaries isn't cruelty, it's self-love. That saying no is sometimes the greatest gift we can give, both to ourselves and to others. And I learned that Barcelona, with its labyrinthine streets and golden light, is beautiful. But most importantly, I learned to see my own beauty reflected in it. I returned to Mexico in early November, as the leaves began to fall and the air grew crisper. I didn't return because I had to, but because I wanted to. There's a crucial difference in that. Sebastián and Daniela waited for me at the airport with the children. When they saw me, Sofia ran into my arms with such force that I almost fell. "Grandma, you're so beautiful and tan." Lucas followed, more timid, but equally happy. Sebastián and Daniela stayed a little behind, waiting. When we finally approached, Daniela was the first to speak. "Carmen, can we start over?" I looked at her, at my son, at my grandchildren. I saw not the perfect family I had idealized, but real, imperfect people, capable of both hurting and growing. "We can try," I replied. And in that simple sentence, everything was contained. Cautious forgiveness, realistic hope, clear boundaries. In the following months, things were different. Sebastián and Daniela invited me to dinner, but accepted when I declined because I had other plans. I offered to look after the children, but only when it was convenient for me, not whenever they needed. We celebrated special occasions together, but I kept my life separate, my friends, my interests. For the first time, our relationship seemed balanced. One December afternoon, as we were having coffee in my apartment, Sebastián looked out the window and said, "You know, Mom, I've been thinking, that day at the port when we excluded you from the cruise, it was the worst thing we did, but it was also, in a way, a gift." "A gift?" I raised an eyebrow. "Yes, because it forced you to do what you should have done years ago, to choose yourself. And by doing that, it taught us a lesson we will never forget." "What lesson?" "That true love includes respect, that people are not infinite, even mothers, that there are consequences when you take someone for granted." I took his hand across the table. It was an expensive lesson, but necessary. He was right. That terrible day at the port, that cruel message, had been the catalyst for a transformation we both needed. I needed to learn to value myself. They needed to learn that not everything was guaranteed. The following summer, I returned to Barcelona. This time, not alone or fleeing, but accompanied by Sofia and Lucas for the long weekend I had promised. I showed them the city through my eyes, the places that had helped me to be reborn. "Grandma, why did you come alone the first time?" Sofia asked as we ate ice cream near the beach. "Because sometimes we need to get lost to find ourselves," I replied. "That doesn't make sense," said Lucas, always the practical one. "One day it will," I assured him. "When you're older and need to remember that you are more than the roles you play for others." Later that night, after the children were asleep at the hotel, I went out to the balcony. The city glowed below, alive and pulsating. I picked up my phone and opened the photo gallery. There was the chronology of my transformation, the exhausted and wounded Carmen from the port of Cartagena, the hesitant Carmen of the first days in Barcelona, the Carmen who gradually regained the sparkle in her eyes, the Carmen of now who knew her worth. I sent one of the photos to Sebastián.
Me and the children in front of the Sagrada Familia, all smiling. The answer came immediately. Thank you for showing them the world and for showing us how to live with dignity. I smiled at the phone screen. The journey had been painful, full of tears and difficult decisions, but it had been worth it. Because I learned that sometimes you have to destroy to rebuild. You have to lose to gain. You have to say goodbye to the person you were to welcome the person you can be. And I learned that the most powerful revenge is not to hurt those who hurt us, but to flourish despite the pain. It is to live so fully that they finally understand what they almost lost. At 64, I had sold a house, temporarily lost a family, and found myself. And I wouldn't trade that last part for anything in the world. Because the Carmen who left that poured in tears was not the same Carmen who was now in Barcelona, surrounded by the love of her grandchildren and inner peace. That Carmen had died, and in her place, something much more precious was born. A woman who finally knew she deserved to take up space, have dreams, be a priority in her own life. The revenge had been silent, yes, but the victory was deafening. And as Gaudi's city slept below, I felt for the first time in decades that I was exactly where I should be. Not because someone needed me there, but because I chose to be. And that choice, that small and powerful choice, made all the difference. And so ends the story of Carmen, a woman who at 64 had the courage to choose herself, even when it meant making painful decisions and facing the judgment of those she loved. Her journey teaches us that it's never too late, that self-love is not selfishness, and that sometimes the greatest lesson we can give our children is to show them that we too deserve respect and dignity. And you, what did you think of Carmen's story? Do you think she went too far by selling the house, or did she do exactly what was necessary to regain her worth? Have you ever experienced or know anyone who went through a similar situation? Leave your opinion in the comments. We love reading your perspectives and stories. Every comment enriches our community and helps us better understand the complex family dynamics we all face. If this story touched you in any way, leave your like to support the channel. Subscribe and activate notifications so you don't miss the next stories. Share this video with someone who needs to hear this message. And don't forget to write in the comments where you are watching this video. We love to know how far our stories are reaching.
Remembering yourself isn't revenge, it's survival. Setting boundaries isn't cruelty, it's self-love. And it's never, ever too late to start over. If you know someone going through a difficult family situation, share this story. Sometimes seeing our own struggle reflected in someone else's story can give us the strength we need to make the necessary changes in our lives. Until the next story.